Hello. I think that ending has proved quite controversial.
Yeah, as in critically, it was quite controversial. I didn't write it.
Contact lenses?
Oh, no, not contact lenses, CGI, actually.
Ah.
Yeah, to spoil it.
And
Method acting.
yeah, I was going to say, I hope you don't method act and take your work home with you.
No, definitely not. No.
What preparation do you do for roles like that?
Well, I mean, it's so difficult to talk about acting without sounding sort of incredibly pretentious and stuff, so I try not to do it too much, but I sort of go through a load of questions that I've built up over the years that I sort of apply to every character. And then, for this, Paul Andrew Williams, who wrote and directed it, talked to me early on about that he sort of thought it was a remake of High Plains Drifter, the Clint Eastwood movie. And so I sort of had a look at that and was thinking really in terms of like old westerns and kind of going for quite bold, almost quite broad characterisation, and then trying to sort of work it back down into something that was sort of naturalistic and you could put into a sort of realistic context. But then, like with everything, what I try and do is a lot of work, and then like I just look at whatever I'm doing, whether it's exhibitions or film or listening to music, that I'm sort of always got my ear out and eye out for things that I can carry into the character, that I can get from sort of random sources really, that might feed into it. And then on the day I try to throw away all of that and all of the notes and just not think about any of that stuff and hope that I've somehow absorbed it and that it will come out in a way that I won't even know about really. So it's a kind of, that's what I've developed over the years. God knows if it's effective or not. But that's my method, not the method.
I think one of my favourite scenes is at the fun fair.
Yeah.
Do you like those rides? Or?
Yeah, I did. I had a great time. Kevin Harvey, who plays the character who's on the waltzer with me, who I cut him on his leg, was really suffered from motion sickness very, very badly, and was genuinely throwing up between, had to be taken off the ride, much to my merriment, and to be ill. And I like the waltzer. There are other things, I'm not too keen on heights or stuff, but I actually, and Paul was sort of saying between takes, you can go further with that, with my reactions to it, and I was like, great. And then by the end, I was looking at the camera doing stuff, like straight down the lens, and they didn't use that, but it was just an opportunity to really go wild. It was quite cathartic, that. That was at the end of the shoot, it was the last few things we shot. We shot all of the Fairground stuff in 2 days, because that was the only time that we had. It was during the lockdown, and that was the only time that we had on Barry Island, which is where the Fairground was. So we did it all in 2 days, and I think it's about 25% of the film is at the fair. So it was an incredible amount of stuff that we had to get in a very short amount of time. And so to just kind of go crazy was fun.
I was going to ask, it was a very fast shoot, was it?
3 weeks, the whole film.
3 weeks during lockdown. And Barry Island is where exactly?
Barry Island is in Wales. And we shot the rest of the film in southeast London, sort of on the border of Kent. So it was me and Paul drove together and the rest of the crew. And we sort of changed crew. We went with a Welsh crew because they weren't allowing people into Wales. Normally they don't allow people out, but they weren't allowing people into Wales. And so we had to change crew and have like an almost entirely, we could only have so many members of the crew into Wales and stuff. All those sort of logistics. It was amazing. Dominic Tyre, who produced the film, really had to overcome a lot of stuff because of that. And it was an amazing job by production,
I think one of the things I like, the difference between American gangster movies and British ones is that there's this strain of low-budget British gangster movies by Paul Andrew Williams, Shane Meadows, and also Ben Wheatley,
Yeah.
which kind of are the opposite of the flamboyant, operatic American style.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, I was just watching the film again, and I you know, because Paul had said about that Western influence, you know, it is a Western really, rather than a gangster film, I think. It's like a man goes to a sort of misbegotten small town seeking revenge on his former associates. And I think it's more like a Walter Hill film. That's what it reminds me of, like the Long Riders or something. And everyone's got these crazy faces. I was watching early on in the scene after the first murder, Kevin Harvey, who was being ill on the water, the way he's sort of eating his toast is this really almost exaggerating. It's evocative, I think, of like westerns, of 1970s westerns, and maybe a bit of Sam Peckinpah in there as well, you know, with the characterisation.
A bit of horror as well.
Yeah, of course, yeah, you know, black eyes and stuff, that's all horror type stuff.
What British gangster movies do you like?
Well, The Long Good Friday is one of the greatest, you know, films I think ever made, whether it's British or anywhere. Very prescient, very ahead of its time. I could talk for hours about that film. Get Carter, which was another big influence on Ball. You know, I mean, you mentioned Shane Meadows stuff, and you know, a lot of people have mentioned Dead Man's Shoes. And Paul was reluctant and wasn't keen on the comparison with that film, but I'm sort of honoured if it's compared to that film. I love that film. Paddy Considine's amazing. You know, that's that. I think there's a lot of crossover, and I don't mind that comparison at all. You know.
And also, the great British gangsters are played by normal people, actors from normal backgrounds, I'll say,
Yeah.
as opposed to actors who went to Eton or Oxford or Cambridge.
Yeah. I didn't
Like-
go to Eton. Or that.
I'm thinking of, you know, Richard Burton,
Bob
Michael
Hoskins.
Michael Caine.
Yeah.
And do you think there's a sort of a window that is now closing for actors from what I call a normal background?
I don't know. I think, you know, any job, if you come from money, unless it's football or boxing, you have more chance of being successful if you come from a rich background. There isn't a job that isn't true of. If you come from rich, if you come from paid for education, you have a much better shot in any field, acting included, you know, other than football and fighting. You know, like, you know, and that's the only place where there's a level playing field, there's no posh people. There's no people who are rich in those fields.
You've just finished, or you are finishing, your writing directing debut.
I am,
That's
yeah.
right. And the title is...
You say it,
Oh,
because
God.
I keep getting told off for my pronunciation of my own
well,
movie.
my pronunciation is probably not very good. Clockenloader.
Clock and Ladder, yeah. It's set in Belgium. We didn't shoot it in Belgium, we shot it in West Sussex, but we're pretending it's Belgium, and obviously it means, you know, whistleblower or bell ringer in Belgium.
Why Belgium?
It's about a government whistleblower and his wife who've got a secret, a big secret, and they leave England and run. She's from Belgium to the wife is played by Sura Donker, and they run to the Belgian countryside to hide, to wait for a newspaper journalist to turn up so that they can tell their secret to her. And in the meantime, 2 private security contractors arrive to sort of watch them and bodyguard them. And it's sort of it's a chamber piece, character-based chamber piece, really dressed up like a political thriller.
Is it a comedy or?
Yeah, it's sort of a black comedy. It's an unusual film actually by design, and yeah, but it's supposed to be funny. I've watched it about 8 million times, so it stopped being funny quite a while ago. But I hope it's funny.
And you, maybe in Belgium, I don't know, you're best known for your gangster roles, but I actually you do sitcom, a BBC sitcom.
Yeah, I've done sitcoms, yeah.
And I watched Ben Wheatley's Happy New Year, Colin Burstead.
Happy New Year, Colin Burstead. I'm very proud of that film. You're one of about 11 people who've ever seen that film.
I don't think it came out in Belgium, which is a shame because it's really good.
It barely came out in England, actually. The BBC didn't do a very good job of pushing that.
No, but so you seem to be a very versatile actor, and I was wondering if there was any type of role you feel you couldn't play.
Well, it's unlikely that I'll be cast in a number of parts. You know, rom-coms don't come knocking very often. You know, I'm sure I'll be all right, but I'm not really matinee idol material. You know, anything based on being handsome or well-educated is unlikely to come my way.
But never say never, because
No,
James
plastic surgeons are
Gandolfini.
getting better and better.
James Gandolfini played in a rom-com.
Yeah, that's
and a
true.
very good
Thanks
one.
for that. Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions?
Well, this is a unique opportunity to actually ask the actor about the character's thoughts in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering, does Bull, in his quest for revenge, is it personally motivated? I'm going to get these guys who wronged me, or is it more of a sense of justice, especially because he's apparently this supernatural element at the end?
Mm-hmm. For me, it's kind of a primal thing about his son, really. And I suppose I'm in Belgium and the director isn't here, so I can talk about stuff that I said to Paul. I talked about motivation and he was like, that wasn't in my head, but it was definitely in mine. I felt that the Norm character, you know, these people, these sort of dark narcissists that exist in places where, you know, there aren't any police, or these sort of small towns and sort of places at the end of the tracks where characters like that thrive, you know. That they create these sort of fiefdoms, and the way they exercise their power and control can extend to all kinds of abuse, you know. And actually, Norm's relationship to all of the men that surround him are all a lot younger than him. You know, I wondered how coercive he'd been throughout their young lives, and whether in fact it was a revenge coming from a lot earlier in his life than just the events that we see. That was what I thought was going on. But Paul doesn't agree. But he's not here. So.
Any other questions?
Was there any moment where you thought maybe there's a little, I cannot do this because of the violence? Or is there anything that would,
Is there anything you wouldn't do?
Is there, the violence, was it a thing, or was it more the character for you to accept the part?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I just wanted to work with Paul Andrew Williams. I thought he was a great filmmaker, and when he sent it to me, I get sent a lot of violent stuff, and they always want me. It's ridiculous. If you know me personally, you know it's kind of, I'm so far removed from that as a human being. But people always want me to beat people up and kill them and set them on fire and kill their families and whatever. And I'm kind of try not to do it because I've done it so much, and I think it's a bit unimaginative when they ask me to do it as well. I'm like, if you've come to me, then how imaginative are you going to be with the rest of it? But because it was Paul, I knew he was putting a spin on it, and it was going to be rooted in something. And the way that he sort of subverted the sort of fugitive or running away genre for London to Brighton, and in all of his films, Song for Marion feels like a family film, but there's a real sort of heavy theme about mortality in that. He always roots his work in something beyond what it appears to be. So, however violent it was, I was like, there's going to be more to this. So, no, whatever he asked me to do, whatever he asked me to cut off anyone, I was happy to do it. You know.
I saw a scene in this movie, you with your son in the bed and the lantern. It's the same in Kill List, there is also a scene like that. You and your son.
That's right, yeah.
Is it coincidence or?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's actually very similarly lit, that scene. Yeah, I genuinely hadn't thought of that. Possibly that was an echo of it. But I don't know. Paul's not really, he's not a filmmaker who sort of very consciously mimics other filmmakers. So I think, and I can't speak for him, that's probably an accident. But you're right, that has got a very similar look, that scene.
Did he take you for this movie because he saw you in Killers?
No, me and Paul worked together before years ago, and we've been talking about working together for ages. But what actually, just to draw that comparison, what I think is interesting is actually in Kill List, that moment and that scene really is about how I can't connect to my son. And I tell him a very inappropriate story about the war in Iraq and the blowing up of a column of men and the people being killed as a bedtime story because I'm such a psychological wreck that I can't help but ruin my son's life. And in this, I think it's much more about the connection actually with the son. So, you know, they're actually very different scenes, but you're absolutely right in the sense that they sort of have a similar look to them. Yeah, the POV, yeah.
I forgot to mention you've been playing Winston Churchill
Yes.
on Peaky Blinders.
Yeah.
Unrecognisable. How much makeup does that involve?
Yeah, it's a 4-hour makeup for that, yeah. So I haven't been in this series, I'm in the last episode of this series, I think. I think I'm now allowed to say that. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but yeah, I'm in the last episode of this series and in the last one as well.
But it's not that much of a spoiler because we know Winston Churchill doesn't die.
No, he lives, yeah, he makes it through. And I don't kill anyone, I don't chop anyone, I don't kill Cillian Murphy or anything.
And the cigars are very big.
The cigars are a source of frustration for me, actually. I learnt how to smoke cigars at the Davidoff store in Jermyn Street in London and took great effort and endeavour because I don't smoke cigars and I had to sort of learn how to smoke one. And then I turned up on the day and we have to use these fucking herbal things because that's the rule now. You know, we've reached a level of sort of philistinism with this fucking nonsense that now means that you know, even if you're playing an iconic character, it's more important that, I don't know, you smoke these. So I was like, what's this? And then you light it and it doesn't behave like a cigar. I could do a long moan about that. I know I already have, but I could do more.
Your favourite Belgian beer?
I don't really drink beer, I'm sorry to say. You know, I don't know, and I don't want to say anything sort of perfunctory. I don't know, I'm not a big drinker, you know.
Okay, no problem. And which actors do you most admire?
Oh, Christ. I mean, Jenna Rowlands is my favourite actor of all time. I love her work. I think she took it to a different level. I think she takes risks takes risks beyond what most actors would ever dare to, particularly on screen and on camera. And I think there might be other actors, but I think Jenna Rowlands is the only actor that's ever made me like burst into tears, not because of the context of the scene, but because of what I felt was like seeing the height of what this is, of what we do. Like, it was just beyond what I thought acting could be. And I fucking wept during a scene because of her, what she does. I just think she's magical and like from fucking another galaxy. So yeah, Jenna Rowlands is my favourite actor.
Thank you very much, Neil.
Thank you.